when he was immersed by John the Baptizer, God's Spirit came upon Jesus and God spoke, saying, "You are my Son, the Beloved. I have approved you." Luke 3. 21-23. Mount 3. 16, 17. Evidently Jesus, the man, was then born again as a Spirit-begotten Son with the hope of returning to life in heaven, and he was anointed by Spirit to be God's appointed King and High Priest. Joe 3. 3-6. Compare 17. 4, 5. See Jesus Christ, his baptism. A similar expression was made by God at the Transfiguration on the Mount, in which vision Jesus was seen in kingdom glory. Compare Mount 16. 28 and 17. 1-5. With regard to Jesus' resurrection from the dead, Paul applied part of Psalm 2 to that occasion, quoting God's words, "You are my Son, I have become your Father this day," and he also applied words from God's covenant with David, namely, "I myself shall become his Father, and he himself will become my Son." PS 2. 7. 2-7. 14. Act 13. 33. Heb 1. 5. Compare Heb 5. 5. By his resurrection from the dead to spirit life, Jesus was declared God's Son. Row 1. 4. Declared righteous in spirit. 1-3. 16. Thus, it is seen that, even as David as a grown man could become God's son in a special sense, so, too, Christ Jesus. Whether taken literally or figuratively, the description of the lazy man's situation is true. "I passed along by the field of the lazy individual and by the vineyard of the man in need of heart. And, look, all of it produced weeds. Nettles covered its very surface, and its stone wall itself has been torn down. Through great laziness the beamwork sinks in, and through the letting down of the hands the house leaks." PR 24. 30, 31. EC 10. 18. Whoever hires the lazy person, or whoever he represents, is bound to be disappointed and vexed and will suffer loss, for, as vinegar to the teeth and as smoke to the eyes, so the lazy man is to those sending him forth. PR 10. 26. The slothful one's laziness will eventually bring dire results to him, for the very craving of the lazy will put him to death. His craving is for things he does not deserve or that are wrong. He may come to ruin in trying to get them. Adenio textoi acute muritra longo, lead 228 persons on the list for aid, but to let them marry and use their energies and abilities in rearing children and managing a household. 1-5. 9-16. In the matter of material assistance in the Christian congregation, the Bible rule is, "If anyone does not want to work, neither let him eat." 2-3. 10. The family head must provide for his household, and the wife must not eat the bread of laziness. PR 31. 27. 1-5. 8. Avoid laziness in study and in the ministry. Counsel is given against laziness regarding studying and getting a deeper understanding of God's purposes as well as in engaging in the Christian ministry. The Apostle Paul reproved some unprogressive Hebrew Christians, pointing out, "You have become dull sluggish in your hearing. For, indeed, although you ought to be teachers in view of the time, you again need someone to teach you from the beginning the elementary things of the sacred pronouncements of God. And you have become such as need milk, not solid food." Heb 5. 11, 12. He also admonishes, "Do not loiter, be slothful at your business. Be aglow with the Spirit." Row 12. 11. Lead. One of the heavy metallic elements, having the specific gravity 11.34. The dull grey metal was useful as weight on fish lines and nets and for heavy lids, or covers. Moses poetically sang in triumph that the Egyptians sank like lead. Heb. O middle.Phoreth in the Red Sea. Acts 15. 10. The Greek verb translated sound at Acts 27. 28. Bolizo literally means heave the lead. The Hebrew word translated plumb. In the Bible book of Revelation the Apostle John speaks of the followers of Jesus Christ as loosed. from our sins by means of his own blood, and says that he made us to be a kingdom, priests to his God and Father. Re 1. 5, 6. This last book of the Bible also reveals the number composing the body of under-priests. Those whom Jesus Christ made to be a kingdom and priests to our God are shown as singing a new song in which they say that they were bought by Christ's blood. Re 5. 9, 10. Further on, the ones singing the new song are enumerated as 144,000 persons bought from among mankind as first fruits to God and to the Lamb. Re 14. 1-5. Finally, the Sunday priesthood is shown as being resurrected to heaven and joining Jesus Christ in his rule, becoming priests of God and of the Christ and ruling as kings with Christ during his 1,000-year reign. Re 20. 4, 6. By comparing the priesthood of Israel, as well as its functions and benefits to the people of that nation, Heb 8. 5, we can get some idea of the benefits and blessings to be received. O texto acute miritra longo, priest 688. Israel, when the kingdom and priesthood were faithfully to God, during which time Judah and Israel were many, like the grains of sand that are by the sea for multitude, eating and drinking and rejoicing, and dwelling in security, everyone under his own vine and under his own fig tree. 1 Kai 4. 20, 25. Pagan priests. The ancient nations had priests through whom they made approach to their gods. These men were reverenced by the people and always wielded great influence, generally being among the ruling class, or being close advisors to the rulers. The priesthood was the most educated class and generally held the people in ignorance. In this way they were able to prey on the superstition of the people and their fear of the unknown. In Egypt, for example, the people were led to worship the Nile River as a god, viewing their priests as possessing divine control over its seasonal overflow, on which their crops depended. This encouragement of superstitious ignorance was in direct contrast to Israel's priests, who constantly read and taught the law to the entire nation. Each man was to know God in his law. 6. 1-3. The people themselves were able to read and write, being commanded by Jehovah to read and teach his law to their children. 6. 4-9. Not the pattern for Israel's priesthood. In spite of these facts, there are some who claim that the priesthood of Israel and the formulation of many of its regulations were patterned after those of Egypt. They argue that Moses, the mediator of the law covenant, was deeply influenced by his life in Egypt, his training in the court of Pharaoh, and his instruction in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. Acts 7. 22. Their line of argument, the detention of human souls. Compare Mount 11. 23. But is only for wicked superhuman spirits who are rebels against God. The condition of utter debasement represented by Tartarus is a precursor of the abyssing that Satan and his demons are to experience prior to the start of the 1,000-year reign of Christ. This, in turn, is to be followed after the end of the 1,000 years by their utter destruction in the second death. Mount 25. 41. Re 20. 1-3, 7-10, 14. Tatanay Tatamiddle.nay. The governor of the Persian province beyond the river during the reign of Darius I his spies. When the Jews again started to rebuild the temple in Darius' second year 520 BCE, Tatanay and his colleagues came to Jerusalem to conduct an inquiry. The Jews appealed to Cyrus' original decree. So Tatanay wrote to Darius asking if such a decree had been issued, as the Jews contended. The answer received confirmed Cyrus' decree and the validity of the temple work, and it warned Tatanay not to interfere but to render material assistance to the Jews. This, Tatanay proceeded to do. As 4. 24. 6. 13. 2. A permanent mark or design on the skin made by cutting the skin to produce scars or by inserting coloring matter under the skin. The Israelites were forbidden to engage in this practice, one that was common among some other ancient peoples. 19. 28. For example, there were times when the Egyptians tattooed the names or symbols of their deities on their breast or arms. By complying with Jehovah's law not to disfigure their bodies, the Israelites would have stood out as different from other nations. 14. 1, 2. The prohibition would also have impressed upon them a proper respect for the human body as God's creation, to be used in honoring him. PS 100. 3. 139. 13-16. Row 12. 1. Tor. The 22nd and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The name of the letter literally means mark. Compares 9. 4. FTN. In the Hebrew, it is the initial letter in each of the 8 verses of Psalm 119. 169-176. Taxation. An assessment of money, of goods, or of labor imposed by an authority on persons or property. Forms of taxation have long been employed to support the services of government, public officials, and also priests. The taxes that were imposed anciently included a tithe, tribute, toll, head or poll tax, and tax on consumer items, exports, imports, and goods taken through a country by merchants. Taxes for maintaining Jehovah's sanctuary. The service of the sanctuary was maintained through taxation. 18, 19. Col 3. 16. Paul's statement at 1 Corinthians 14. 15 concerning singing appears to indicate that it was a regular feature of Christian worship. In recording his inspired vision, John tells of various heavenly creatures singing to God and Christ. Re 5. 8-10. 14. 3. 15. 2-4. Nature of biblical music. The Israelites' higher plane of morality and their superior literature, as exemplified by the poetry and prose of the Hebrew scriptures, suggest that the music of ancient Israel most likely transcended that of her contemporaries. Certainly the inspiration for the music of Israel was far loftier than that of neighboring nations. Of interest is in a Syrian bas-relief in which King Sennacherib is represented as demanding that King Hezekiah pay him as tribute both male and female musicians. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, p. 288. It has long been held by some that Hebrew music was all melody, without harmony. However, the prominence alone of the harp and other stringed instruments in Israel weighs heavily against this assumption. It is almost inconceivable that a musician would play a multi-stringed instrument and fail to notice that a combination of certain tones was quite pleasing, or that a specific series of notes as in an arpeggio produced a pleasant sound. An informed source on the history of music, Kurt Sachs, states, the deep-rooted prejudice that harmony and polyphony, two or more musical parts or voices combined, have been a prerogative of the medieval and modern West does not hold water. He goes on to say that even among primitive cultures there are many examples of music running in fifths, fourths, thirds as well as in octaves, and that among these peoples, including certain pygmy tribes, there was a development of overlapping antiphony alternate singing by two divisions o textoi acute muritra longo. Mustache 454, 24 courses of sanctuary musicians is being addressed, or it may have been another one of the accomplished musicians, since the record says that they were to act as directors. 1 ch 15. 21. 25. 1, 7-31. In some 20 other psalms the superscriptions are even more specific in their reference to the directors. To the director on stringed instruments, to the director on the lower octave, and so on. PS4, 12, and others. See Shemoneth. Additionally, there are scriptural references to the heads of the singers, to the experts, and to the learners. All of this testifies to a high standard of music. NE 12. 46. 1 ch 25. 7, 8. Much of the group singing in Israel appears to have been antiphonal, either two half choruses alternating in singing parallel lines, or a soloist and an answering chorus, all to three non-white firstborn. U3. 11-13. 39-43. To redeem the 273 firstborn in excess of all whites, a 5 shekel $11 payment to the sanctuary was required for each. U3. 44-51. Also the Kohatites, Goshenites, and Merarites between 30 and 50 years of age were numbered. These were given special assignments of service at the sanctuary. U4. 34-49. On the plains of Moab. A second recorded registration is the one taken on the plains of Moab, after the scourge because of Israel's sin in connection with Baal of Peor. It was found then that the number of men 20 years old and upward was 601,730, a decrease of 1,820 from the census taken nearly 39 years earlier. New 26. 1, 2, 51. The count of Levites from a month old and upward was 23,000, or 1,000 and more than the first census. New 26. 57, 62. David's calamitous registration. A registration taken toward the end of King David's reign is also recorded, one that brought calamity. The account at 2 Samuel 24. 1 reads, "And again the anger of Jehovah came to be hot against Israel, when one incited David against them, saying, Go, take account of Israel and Judah. The one who did the inciting is not there identified. Was it some human counselor? Was it Satan? Or even God?" 1 Chronicles 21. 1 helps to answer the question, saying, Satan proceeded to stand up against Israel and to incite David to number Israel. That rendering in the New World Translation agrees with the Hebrew text and with translations into Greek, Syriac, and Latin. It is also consistent with the renderings in other translations. At NERS, JB, Mo. However, as the footnote at 1 Chronicles 21. 1 points out, the Hebrew word samiddle.tan can also be rendered a resistor. Byington translates it as Satan. Young's translation reads, an adversary. So it is possible that the one moving David to decide on the calamitous course was a bad human counselor. Interestingly, a footnote at 2 Samuel 24. 1 shows that this text could be rendered. And again the anger of Jehovah came to be hot against Israel, when he incited David against them. A translation in the Bible in Basic English reads, Again the wrath of the Lord was burning against Israel, and moving David against them, he said, Go, take the number of Israel and Judah. Hence, some commentators consider that the one or he who incited David to take the census was Jehovah. His anger against Israel, according to 1, 3, 5. Head of the paternal house of Zatu, 300 males of which returned with Ezra, son of Jahaziel. Ezrate. 1, 5. 6. The son of Jehiel of the sons of Elam, who suggested to Ezra the covenant by which those in restored Judah having foreign wives volunteer to send them away. Ez 10. 2-4. 7. Father of the Shemaiah, who did repair work on Jerusalem's wall. Ne 3. 29. 8. Father-in-law of Tobiah the Ammonite, son of Ara. Ne 4. 3. 6. 17, 18. 9. A descendant of David who lived after the Babylonian exile. 1 Ch 3. 5, 9, 10, 21, 22. Shechem shoulder of land. 1. Son of Hivite chieftain Hummer. Ge 33. 19. Jos 24. 32 After Jacob settled near the city of Shechem Sino. 4. His daughter Dinah began associating with females of that city. The man Shechem, described as being the most honorable of the whole house of his father, saw Dinah and lay down with her and violated her. Then he fell in love with Dinah and wanted to marry her. But Jacob's sons were enraged about the affair and, with deceit, said that they could make marriage arrangements only with circumcised man. It was agreeable to Shechem and his father Hamor, and they convinced the Shechemites to get circumcised. However, before the males of Shechem could recover from being circumcised, Jacob's sons Simeon and Levi attacked the city, killing Hamor, Shechem, and all the other men. Ge 34. 1-31. 2. The son of Gilead of the tribe of Manasseh. Shechem became the family head of the Shechemites, who are not to be confused with the Canaanite inhabitants of Shechem. New 26. 28, 30, 31. Jos 17. 2. 3. The son of Shemida of the tribe of Manasseh. 1 Ch 7. 19. 4. An ancient city linked with Nablus or, more precisely, with nearby Tel Balata. PS 60. 6. 108. 7. Picture, Volume 1, p. 530, situated at the end of the narrow valley running between Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. Tel Balat lies about 48 kilometers 30 mi of Jerusalem. A good supply of water is available, and just east of the site there is a fertile plain. Anciently Shechem commanded the EW and NS roads traversing central Pass. PS 26. 2. 66. 10. At Psalm 16. 7 David wrote, I shall bless Jehovah, who has given me advice. Really, during the nights my kidneys have corrected me. God's advice reached the innermost recesses of David's being as a worshipper of the true God. Because it had settled so deeply within, the advice was identified with the kidneys, and thus it could be said that the kidneys corrected David. God's word, although it might be on the lips of the wicked ones, does not reach down to the innermost aspects of their personality. Thus, regarding the wicked ones, Jeremiah 12:2 says, they keep going ahead. They have also produced fruit. You are near in their mouth, but far away from their kidneys. This parallels the scripture at Isaiah 29:13, quoted by Jesus at Matthew 15:7-8, which says the same thing about the heart of the wicked, thus showing that at times heart and kidneys are used in a corresponding way. Kidron, torrent valley of Kidron, possibly from a root meaning be dark. A deep valley that separates Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives and runs first southeastward and then southward along the city. Waterless even in winter, except in case of an especially heavy rain, the Kidron Valley near Hal Kidron starts some distance to the end of Jerusalem's walls. At first a broad and shallow valley, it continues to narrow and deepen. By the time it is opposite the former temple area, it is approximately 30 meters, 100 feet deep and 120 meters, 390 feet wide. Farther to the east the Kidron Valley was joined by the Doropian Valley and the Valley of Hinnom respectively. From then on it continued southeastward across the arid wilderness of Judah to the Dead Sea. The modern name applied to the valley's lower course is Wadi and the meaning Fire Wadi, indicating that it is hot and dry most of the time. Opposite Jerusalem, rock-cut tombs occupy the steep and rocky slopes so textually acute Miritra Longo, in the constellation 151 Kiln. A heating chamber designed for processing various materials. Kilns of ancient times were used for baking bricks, firing pottery, and processing lime. Unlike the modern meaning of the English term kiln, the Hebrew word kiv middle-shan does not embrace structures classified as ovens. See oven. In view of the progress made in pre-flood times in the forging of copper and iron tools GE4. 22. Kilns were likely developed at an early point in man's history. Though not directly mentioned, there is evidence for their use in Nimrod's day. When about to build the city of Babel and its tower in the land of Shinar, the post-flood people said, "Come on. Let us make bricks and bake them with a burning process." GE11. 3 ancient Babylonian ruins reveal the use of kiln-fired bricks from ancient times. Such durable bricks were used. History of the Persian Empire, by A. Olmsted, 1948, p. 123. Assyrian inscriptions relating to the time of Shalmaneser III, evidently a contemporary of Jehu of Israel, mention an invasion of Media and the receiving of tribute from kings of Parsua, a region apparently situated to the W of Lake Umia and bordering on Assyria. Many scholars consider Parsua to be the name then applied to the land of the Persians, though others would associate it with the Parthians. At any rate, in later inscriptions the Persians are placed considerably more to the s, being settled in Parsa to the south of Elam in what is now the province of Fars in modern Iran. Anshan, a district or city bordering Elam and once within its domain, was also occupied by the Persians. Thus, in their early history the Persians seem to have held only the southwestern portion of the extensive Iranian plateau, their boundaries being Elam and Media on the MW, Parthia on the N, Cumania on the E, and the Persian Gulf on the Essence. With the exception of the hot, humid coastlands of the Persian Gulf, the land mainly consisted of the southern portion of the rugged Zagros mountain range, broken by long and quite fertile valleys having well-wooded slopes. The climate in the valleys is temperate, but on the higher plateau regions the arid, windswept lands experience severe cold in the winter months. Like the Medes, the Persians appear to have done much stock raising, along with necessary agriculture, and Persian King Darius the Great proudly described his native land as beautiful and rich in horses and men. Encyclopaedia Britannica, 1959, Volume 17, p. 603. Originally leading a somewhat austere, often nomadic life, the Persians manifested a great love for luxury and luxurious surroundings during the period of the empire. Compare is 1. 3-7. Also the clothing given to Mordecai, 8. 15. Sculptures at Persepolis represent the Persians as dressing with flowing, ankle-length robes, girded at the waist, and wearing low-laced shoes. By contrast, the Medes are depicted as wearing a tight, long-sleeved coat ending near the knee. Picture, Volume 2, p. 328. Both Persians and Medes apparently made use of trousers. Persian soldiers are shown wearing trousers and sleeved tunics over iron-scaled armor. They were expert horsemen. O textoi acute miritra longo. Persia, Persians 612. His leadership. Herodotus, I, 107, 108. Cyropedia, I, 2. Until then the Medes had been dominant over the Persians, but Cyrus gained a swift victory over Median king Astyages and captured his capital city of Ecbatana 550 BCE. Compared I8. 3, 20. The Median Empire thus came under the control of the Persians. Although the Medes continued subservient to the Persians during the remainder of the Achaemenid dynasty, or today generally to a depth of 30 to 46 centimeters 12 to 18 inches. The treading by bulls or other animals, as they constantly circled the floor, gradually broke down the straw and freed the grain from the chaff. The animals were not muzzled while treading the grain. De 25. 4. Ho 10. 11. 1 Co 9. 9, 10. Threshing instruments pulled by animals speeded up the process and were more thorough than animal hooves alone. Isla 41. 15. Am1. 3 models used in more modern times are either broad flat heavy sledges with sharp teeth of stone or of iron on their underside, or frames that pull heavy cylindrical or textoi acute miritra longo. Throne 1097. Threshing also illustrates the crushing treatment men sometimes mete out to others. 2 Chi 13. 7. Or the separation of wheat from chaff may depict the separation of the righteous from the wicked by Jehovah's judgment. Mount 3. 12. In yet another sense, a long and bountiful threshing denotes prosperity and Jehovah's blessing. La 26. 5. Jo 2. 24. Throat. Sinek. Throne. The Hebrew term kis middle dots basically means seat 1 se 4. 13. Chetu Kai 4. 10. Or a seat of special importance such as a throne 1 Ka 22. 10. Its application is not limited to the seats of ruling monarchs 1 Kai 2. 19. Eni 3. 7. Es 3. 1. Es 26. 16. Nor does it strictly refer to a seat with a high back and armrests. Eli, for instance, while at the gate of Zillow, fell backward from his kiss middle dots, evidently a backless seat. Once a 4. 13. 18. The Greek term throneumbus generally refers to a high stool, with back, arms, and a footstool. Isaiah 14. 9 intimates that thrones were universally used by monarchs, the Bible specifically mentioning the thrones of Egypt Ge 41. 40. X 11. 5. 12. 29. Assyria John 3. 6. Babylon Issa 14. 4. 13. Da 5. 20. Persia is 1. 2. 5. 1, and Moab JJ 3. 17, 20. Archaeologists believe that they have found thrones used by rulers or their associates of all these powers, except Moab. An ivory panel, thought to depict a Canaanite throne and footstool, was found at Megiddo. Generally, these non-Israelite thrones have backs and armrests, being richly carved or ornamented, mats, and their shoulders were rubbed bare from carrying materials used in the construction of seg works. As Nebuchadnezzar received no wages for serving as Jehovah's instrument in executing judgment upon Tyre, he promised to give him the wealth of Egypt. S26. 7-11. 29. 17-20. C. Tyre. 1 fragmentary Babylonian no textoi acute miritra longo and Boshazband 482 mot. I reached the level of the water. I then saw that the wall which my father had prepared was too small in its construction. I built with bitumen and brick a mighty wall which, like a mountain, could not be moved and connected it with the wall of my father. I laid its foundations on the breast of the underworld. Its top I raised up like a mountain. Along this wall to strengthen it I constructed a third, and as the base of a protecting wall I laid a foundation of bricks and built it on the breast of the underworld and laid its foundation. The fortifications of Esagila and Babylon I strengthened and established the name of my reign forever. Archaeology and the Bible, by G. Barton, 1949, pages 478, 479. The foregoing harmonizes with Nebuchadnezzar's boast made just before he lost his sanity. Is not this Babylon the Great, that I myself have built for the royal house with the strength of my might and for the dignity of my majesty? Darfur. 30. But when, in fulfillment of his divinely sent dream about the chopped-down tree, his reasoning powers were restored, Nebuchadnezzar had to acknowledge that Jehovah is able to humiliate those walking in pride. Darfur. 37. See madness. Very religious. The indications are that Nebuchadnezzar was extremely religious, building and beautifying the temples of numerous Babylonian deities. Particularly was he devoted to the worship of Marduk, the chief god of Babylon. To him Nebuchadnezzar gave credit for his military victories. Trophies of war, including the sacred vessels of Jehovah's temple, appear to have been deposited in the temple of Marduk Merodach. As 1. 7. 5. 14 says an inscription of Nebuchadnezzar. For thy glory, O exalted Merodach, a house have I made. May it receive within itself the abundant tribute of the kings of nations and of all peoples. Records of the past. Assyrian and Egyptian Monuments, London, 1875, Volume V, p. 135. The image of gold set up by Nebuchadnezzar in the plain of Dura was perhaps dedicated to Marduk and designed to promote religious unity in the empire. Enraged over the refusal of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to worship this image even after being given a second opportunity, Nebuchadnezzar commanded that they be thrown into a fiery furnace heated arrangements he has made for mankind from the beginning, with the added undeserved kindness of the resurrection. Row 11. 33-36. Retirement. Withdrawal from one's employment or from certain aspects of it. In assigning the Levites not of the priestly family of Aaron to serve at the tent of meeting under the direction of the priests, Jehovah made loving provisions for their welfare. He commanded Moses. This is what applies to the Levites. From 25 years old upward he will come to enter into the company in the service of the tent of meeting. But after the age of 50 years he will retire from the service company and serve no longer. And he must minister to his brothers in the tent of meeting in taking care of the obligation, but he must render no service. New 8. 23-26. 1 ch 23. 3. At Numbers chapter 4 the service organization of the Levites is described. There it is stated that they were to be registered from the ages of 30 to 50. It was heavy manual labor to set up, take down, and transport the tent of meeting. The 96 socket pedestals of silver for the panel frames weighed a talent c. 34 kilograms. 92 pounds each. There were also 4 pedestals for the pillars between the holy and most holy compartments, of probably the same weight, and 5 copper pedestals for the pillars at the tabernacle entrance. X26. 19, 21, 25, 32, 37. 38. 27 The 48 panel frames 4.5 meters 4.6 feet long. 67 centimeters 26 inches wide were made of acacia, a finer grained, heavy wood, which was gold-plated. X26. 15-25, 29 There were gold-plated bars running lengthwise on each side and across the back of the tabernacle. X26. 26-29 All these items would be heavy. Additionally, there was the considerable weight of the coverings of sealskin, ram skin, goat hair, and linen, as well as the linen screen around the courtyard, with its pillars, socket pedestals, tent pins, and so forth. So the handling of the tabernacle o textoi acute miritra longo, retribution 794, because at the temple more would be needed to care for the greatly enlarged services there. 1 ch 23. 24-27. The Levites who retired at the age of 50 did not retire from all service. They could still serve voluntarily and minister to their brothers in the tent of meeting in taking care of the obligation. New 8. 26. Probably they served as counselors and assisted in caring for some of the lighter work included in the obligation of the Levites, but they were spared the heavier work. And they were still teachers of the law to the people. 33. 8-10. A Hushaltite. 1 ch 11. 26, 29. Sivakai, in a war with the Philistines at Gob, slew Suphsibai, one of the giant like Rephaim, thereby subduing the enemy. 2 Sa 21. 18. 1 ch 20. For when David organized the monthly rotational service of the nation's forces, Sibbecai was placed in charge of the 8th Division. 1 ch 27. 1, 11. He is apparently called Mbernea 2 Samuel 23. 27. Sibboleth. See Shibboleth. Sibma. A town near of the Jordan, taken by Israel from Amorite King Sihon and assigned to the Reubenites, who desired it because of surrounding pasturelands. Apparently it was also called a Sebam. New 32. 2-5, O textoi acute miritra longo, sickness 940. Sickness. See diseases and treatment. Siddim, low plain of Siddim. A valley linked in scripture with the salt Dead Sea. GE 14. 3. There, in Abraham's day, the rebellious kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Zor battled with Elamite king Chedorlaomer and his 3 allies. Defeated, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, only to have some of their troops fall into the pits upon pits of bitumen that filled the area. GE 14. 4, 8-10. Some believe that the lower plain of Siddim is the bay-like section of the Dead Sea of Bali Sand Peninsula. They believe that it once was a fertile valley and was apparently later submerged, perhaps because of earthquake activity or because of topographical changes resulting from God's destruction of Sodom, Gomorrah, and the entire district. GE 19. 24, 25. From time to time, pieces of bituminous matter still rise to the surface of the shallow waters there. See Salt Sea. Sidon, Sidonians see middle.dueni. Ans. Canaan's firstborn son Sidon was the progenitor of the Sidonians. The seaport town of Sidon was named after their forefather, and for many years it was the principal city of the Phoenicians, as the Greeks called the Sidonians. Today the city is known as Saida. A colony of Sidonians also settled about 35 kilometers 22 miles of Sidon and called the place Tyre. In time Tyre surpassed Sidon in many respects, but she never completely lost her identity as a Sidonian settlement. The king of Tyre was sometimes called the king of the Sidonians 1 Chi 16. 31, and frequently Tyre and Sidon are mentioned together in prophecy. J 25. 22. 27. 3. 47. 4. Joe 3. 4. Zech 9. 2. Between the two cities was Zarephath, which the coast of Kittim would afflict Assyria and Eber, but that the attacker would eventually perish. This view would allow for the attack perhaps to originate from the sea-coast region of Macedonia, from which country Alexander the Great advanced, conquering the land of Ashur-Assyria but Babylonia along with the Medo-Persian Empire. Others suggest that the attackers were Romans from the Mediterranean coastlands of Italy. The Latin Vulgate uses Italy in place of Kittim at Numbers 24. 24, and the Targum of Enkelos reads Romans. But the apocryphal book of 1 Maccabees 1. 1, JB uses Kittim to represent the land of Macedonia. In Isaiah's pronouncement against Tyre, Kittim, likely Cyprus, is the point at which the eastbound ships of Tarshish receive the news of Tyre's downfall, and the virgin daughter of Sidon is told by Jehovah to cross over to Kittim itself, in a vain effort to find refuge. Isla 23. 1, 11. 12. This is in harmony with the historical evidence for Phoenician colonies in Cyprus at the time of Isaiah's prophesying c. 778. A 732 BCE. An inscription of Sennacherib relates the flight of King Nulli of Sidon to the island of Nana Cyprus as the rebel kite. A bird not suitable for food, according to Textoi Acute Muritra Longo, Neil 179. Salt of the Assyrian attack. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, pages 287, 288. Similarly, many from Tyre evidently sought haven in Cyprus during Nebuchadnezzar's 13-year siege of Tyre, in fulfillment of Isaiah's proclamation. Final mention of Kittim by that name comes in Daniel's prophecy of the rivalry between the king of the north and king of the south, where an attack by the king of the north is thwarted by the ships of Kittim. Da 11. 30. See Cyprus. Kneading trough. A shallow and generally portable bowl-shaped vessel. It was usually made of wood, but sometimes was earthenware or was made of bronze. In it flour and water were mixed and worked into dough. In preparing leavened bread, the mass was usually leavened by working in a piece of dough saved from a previous baking. The mass of dough was left to rise in the kneading trough before baking. G 18. 6. 1 Sir 28. 24. The usual method was to knead the dough with one's hands, though the Egyptians also used their feet at times, when kneading dough in a large trough. Ho 7. 4. The size of the kneading bowl, or trough, varied considerably. However, one earthenware type often used was a bowl approximately 25 cm 10 inches in diameter and about 8 cm 3 inches deep. Bread was an important part of the Hebrew diet and was baked regularly. Hence, the kneading trough was an essential item among the Israelites and other peoples of antiquity. The frog accusations continued, and upon learning that Jesus was from Galilee, Pilate sent him to Herod Antipas. Herod, displeased because Jesus refused to perform some sign, subjected him to mistreatment and ridicule and returned him to Pilate. The Jewish leaders and the people were again summoned, and Pilate renewed his efforts to avoid sentencing an innocent man to death, asking the crowd if they wanted Jesus released in accord with the custom of freeing a prisoner at each Passover festival. Instead, the crowd, incited by their religious leaders, clamored for the release of Barabbas, a robber, murderer, and seditionist. Repeated attempts by Pilate to free the accused brought only an increase in the shouting for Jesus' impalement. Fearing a riot and seeking to placate the crowd, Pilate acceded to their wishes, washing his hands with water as though cleansing them from blood guilt. Some time prior to this, Pilate's wife had advised him of her troublesome textoi acute muritra longo. Piles 641 actions of the Jews themselves were largely responsible for the strong measures the governor had taken against them. At any rate, the gospel accounts give some accurate insight into the man's makeup. His approach to matters was typical of the Roman ruler, his speech terse and blunt, outwardly expressing the skeptical attitude of the cynic, as in saying what is truth. He, nevertheless, showed fear, likely a superstitious fear, upon hearing that he was dealing with one who claimed to be God's son. Though obviously not the condescending type, he displayed the politician's lack of integrity. He was concerned primarily with his position, what his superiors would say if they heard of further disturbances in his province, fearful of appearing to be overly lenient toward those accused of sedition. Pilate recognized Jesus' innocence and the envy that motivated his accusers. Yet he gave in to the crowd and turned an innocent victim over for them to slaughter rather than risk damage to his political career. As part of the superior authorities, Pilate exercised power by divine tolerance. Row 13. When he bore responsibility for his decision, responsibility that water could not wash away. His wife's dream was evidently of divine origin, even as were the earthquake, the unusual darkness, and the rending of the curtain that took place on that day. Mount 27. 19, 45, 51-54. Lu 23. 44, 45. Her dream should have warned Pilate that this was no ordinary trial, no ordinary defendant. Yet, as Jesus said, the one delivering him to Pilate bore the greater guilt of sin. Joe 19. 10, 11. Judas, who originally betrayed Jesus, was called the son of destruction. Joe 17. 12. Those Pharisees who were guilty of complicity in a plot against Jesus' life were described as subjects for Gehenna. Mount 23. 15:33. Compare Job 8. 37-44. And particularly the high priest, who headed the Sanhedrin, evidenced this to be the case. Immense difficulties have always been acknowledged in many of Daniel's prophecies, and they have been as words shut up even from believers in general. In these latter ages many have bestowed great pains, in searching into history, to illustrate those parts of these prophecies which are already accomplished, and by comparing them with other scriptures, to form some judgment of what yet remains to be fulfilled. And thus much light has been thrown on them. As they shall gradually be more and more accomplished, they will be better understood, and future generations will be far more surprised and instructed by them, than we are. Scott's Explanatory Notes, 1832. The lack of understanding concerning Daniel's prophecies in the early part of the 19th century indicated that this foretold time of the end was yet future, since those having insight, God's true servants, were to understand the prophecy in the time of the end. Dar 12. 9, 10. The expression time of the end is also used in association with particular developments in connection with human government. Daniel 11. 40 reads, In the time of the end the king of the south will engage with the king of the north in a pushing, and against him the king of the north will storm with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. Thereafter the prophecy discusses the actions of the king of the north and indicates that he will come to his end. Dar 11. 41-45. Thus the time of the entero textoi acute miritra longo, Timna 1104 time indefinite, or forever. PS 104. 5. Since the earth will continue to exist, it necessarily follows that time, as an earthly dimension or measurement, will not cease. While it is true that Revelation 10. The 6th of may be rendered there should be time no longer, the context indicates that this means no further grant of time. Thus, a specific or allotted period of time terminates. KJ Other translations, therefore, read. There should be no more delay. At RS there will be no delay any longer. NW commenting on this text, A.T. Robertson observes. This does not mean that chronos time will cease to exist, but only that there will be no more delay in the fulfillment of the seventh trumpet. Verse 7, in answer to the question, how long? 6. 10. Word Pictures in the New Testament, 1933, Volume 6, p. 372. Timnah. 1. Concubine of Esau's son Elipaz and mother of Amalek. GE 36. 10-12 in the genealogy at 1 Chronicles 1. 36, there are first enumerated 5 sons of Esau's son Elipaz. Next are added, Timnah and Amalek. Professor C.F. did by lot to reside in the city. 7. 4. 11. 1. 2 efforts are made to improve the spiritual condition of the Jews. Wealthy Jews agree to make restoration to their poor brothers, whom they have wrongly charged interest on loans. 5. 1-13 At a public assembly, Ezra reads the law and certain Levites share in explaining it. The people weep but are encouraged to rejoice because the day is holy. They rejoice, too, because they understand do textoi acute miritra longo. Neighbor 489 determined just how long after 443 BCE Nehemiah completed the book bearing his name. Agreement with other Bible books. The book of Nehemiah exalts Jehovah God. It reveals him to be the creator. NE 9. 6. Compare GE 1. 1. PS 146. 6. Re 4. 11. A God who answers the sincere prayers of his servants. NE 1. 11. 2. 8. 4. 4, 5, 15, 16. 6. 16. Compare PS 86. 6, 7, and the defender of his people. NE 4. 14, 20. Compare X 14. 14, 25. He is a God of acts of forgiveness, gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness. NE 9. 17. Compare New 14. 18. The God of the heavens, the God great and fear-inspiring, keeping the covenant and loving kindness toward those loving him and keeping his commandments. Anyone. 5. Compare to 7. 9, 10, 21. Numerous allusions to the law are found in the book of Nehemiah. These involve the calamities to result from disobedience and the blessings to come from repentance. Salat 26. 33. To 30. 4. Anyone. 7-9, Loans. Salat 25. 35-38. To 15. 7-11. Any 5. 2-11, Marriage alliances with foreigners. To 7. 3. Any 10. 30, Sabbaths, the release from debt. 6-20. 8. 25. 4. 15. 1, 2. Any 10. 31, the altar fire. 6. 13. Any 10. 34, the festival of booths. To 31. 10-13. Any 8. 14-18, and the entry of Moabites and Ammonites are unfavorable sense. Joseph Thayer's Greek-English lexicon of the New Testament points out that in ancient Greek writings it applied to a nocturnal and riotous procession of half-drunken and frolicsome fellows who after supper parade through the streets with torches and music in honor of Bacchus or some other deity or a victor in the games, and sing and play before the houses of their male and female friends. 1889, p. 367. Such licentious and intemperate conduct, with street processions that were similar to modern carnival celebrations in certain lands, were common in Greek cities of the Apostles' time. So warning counsel on it was appropriate and beneficial for true worshippers. Revelries are definitely not for Christians. They are condemned by God's word. Before they became Christians, some of those to whom Peter wrote his letter, residents in Greek-influenced provinces in Asia Minor 1 p. 1. 1. Proceeded in deeds of loose conduct, lusts, excesses with wine, revelries, drinking matches, and illegal idolatries. But upon becoming Christians, they ceased such things. 1 Pe 4. 3. For with its gross sensuality and dissolution, a revelry was a work belonging to darkness in which Christians would not walk. Row 13. 12-14. The Bible does not rule out joy and merriment. Man is told to rejoice in his Creator, the husband to rejoice in his wife, the laborer in the work of his hands, and the farmer in the fruit of his toil. PS 32. 11. PR 5. 18. EC 3. 22. To 26. 10, 11. Food and drink can accompany and contribute to rejoicing. EC 9. 7. PS 104. 15. Yet moderation should prevail. PR 23. 20. 1 T3. 2, 11. 1 Co 10. 31. Carrying merrymaking to the point of intoxication, along with scenes of disorder and sensuality, is revelry. Paul included revelries among the works of the flesh, the practices of which would not inherit God's kingdom. 5. 19-21. Reviling. Subjecting a person to insulting speech, heaping abuse upon him. For Israelites to revile or call down evil upon their parents was an offense punishable by death. X 21. 17. Mount 15. 4. Mr. 7. 10. Like verbal abuse, physical abuse of parents originated from the same evil disposition and, therefore, carried the same penalty. X 21. 15. Since parents were Jehovah's representatives in relation to their children, a son who reviled his parents was, in effect, reviling God. By the spring of Gihon through Hezekiah's tunnel, the valley of Hinnom, which lay to the south and southwest of ancient Jerusalem, was called Gehenna in the 1st century. The 1st century pool of Siloam, where Jesus told a blind man to wash and be healed. Joe 9. 7. Traditional location of the Garden of Gethsemane. Bethany, as it now appears, Warren's shaft, through which water from the spring of Gihon could have been drawn by buckets. It may have been through such a shaft that David's men gained access to the Jebusite stronghold on Zion 2-5. 8 archaeological excavations on the north side of the ancient city of David western wall of Jerusalem, including massive stones from the 1st century. Many Jews come here to pray. What was everyday life like back in Bible times? What sort of homes did ordinary people have? What kinds of work did they do? What were their customs? Your having some knowledge of these things can aid you in visualizing Bible accounts. At times, that background information is also the key to understanding the meaning of scriptures. Everyday life in ancient Israel. Most houses, like this one in Jerusalem, had flat roofs on which people might visit, walk in the cool evening, or even sleep. 17. 31 ancient lamps, made of earthenware, in which oil was burned. 25. 1-4 a household oven of the sort that was common among the Israelites. 26. 26 Hebrew men and women often carried loads on their shoulder. 24. 15. New 7. 9 vessels were of many sizes and shapes, usually earthenware, sometimes made of stone. 1 Kai 17. 12. 952 In Bible times, grain was reaped by hand, left, threshed with the hooves of animals or a threshing sledge to separate the grain from the chaff below, left, and winnowed below, which involved tossing the grain so that the wind would carry away the chaff. A millstone that was likely used to crush olives so that the oil could be extracted. New 18. 27 Hand mill, used to grind grain into flour. 24. 41 Shepherding was a common occupation in Bible times. 15. 4 Donkeys, or asses, were frequently used as beasts of burden. 1 Ch 12. 40 wells were, and still are, a common source of water in this land. 29. 10 Animals of the Bible. Goats were used to illustrate undesirable qualities and wicked persons. Zech 10. 3. Mount 25. 33 But goats offered in sacrifice were also used to foreshadow the sacrifice of Christ. Heb 9. 12 Using a vivid illustration, Jesus said that it would be easier for a camel to go through the eye of a sewing needle than for a rich man to get into the kingdom. 18. 25 The wild ass avoids places inhabited by humans. Among such creatures Nebuchadnezzar dwelt during his 7 years of madness. 5. 21 Gazelles were used as symbols of beauty. 2. 9 And of speed. 1 Ch 12. 8. 9 This one's genealogy. 1 Chronicles 26. 1 calls the gatekeeper Meshelemiah the son of Ka. 2. A Levite, the son of Imna and the gatekeeper to the east of the temple in King Hezekiah's day. He was in charge of the voluntary offerings of the true God, to give Jehovah's contribution and the most holy things, and had other men under his control. 2 Ch 31. 14-16. Costhorn, a descendant of Judah. Cos became father to Anub and Zobeba and the families of Ahahul the son of Haram. 1 Ch 4. 1, 8. Cushai Cushmiddle.Ear, a Levite of the family of Merari and the father or ancestor of Ethan, one of the group of Levite singers and musicians of David's day. 1 Ch 15. 16, 17 Cushai is evidently called Kishi at 1 Chronicles 6. 44. Kyrios, see Lord. Ladalaramidal.Da, a descendant of Judah and the second named of Sheila's 2 sons. He is referred to as the father of Mareshah. 1 Ch 4. 21. Laban White. 1. The grandson of Abraham's brother Nahor. He was the son of Bethuel and the brother of Rebekah. 24. 15, 29. 28. 5, and he was the father of Leah and Rachel. 29. 16 Laban resided at the city of Haradon in Padanaram, an area of Mesopotamia. 24. 10. 27. 43. 28. 6. 29. 4, 5. Laban is called the son of Bethuel the Syrian, literally, the Aramean. He is also referred to as Laban the Syrian. 28. 5. 25. 20. 31. 20, 24 This designation is fitting in view of the fact that he was a resident of Padanaram, which means plain flatland of Aram, Syria. Laban was a Semite dwelling in a region occupied by persons speaking Aramaic, a Semitic language. To the vicinity just mentioned, aged Abraham sent his servant to find a wife for Isaac. GE 24. 1-4:10 When Laban heard Rebekah's account of her encounter with Abraham's servant and saw the gifts she had been given, he went running to the servant, addressed him as one blessed by Jehovah, and extended hospitality to him.